welcome back to a brand new episode of Starfield with Normal People. My name's Duane, and I am joined by my very good friend Michael. Michael, how are you today?
I am great. I started playing a game. It's not Starfield, so I apologize. I still play Starfield, but I've been playing Dredge.
Shut the podcast down. It's over.
Welcome to Dredge with Normal People.
We've talked about that game. I really want to try it.
I finally started it.
It looks spooky. Is it spooky?
It starts very relaxing and then it starts getting spooky. Yeah.
What do you do in that game?
You do a lot of fishing. Fishing and dredging. Oh, dredging. Yeah. What do you do? You dredge.
You missed it, man. You blew the joke.
But I always find time and space in my heart for Starfield, of course.
Do you know what I really love about the holidays?
What? What is it?
Friends and family, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
that's what I was going to say, too, for sure.
I happen to have a good friend of mine, Eric D, is joining us today. Only our second ever guest on the podcast. I'm really excited to have him. He's a friend. He's a neighbor. An incredible mind, I think, especially when it comes to game theory. We're going to actually talk about game theory and world building today. Eric, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Duane. I'm super happy to be here. I'm super happy to be the second guest that you've brought on here.
You weren't the first, but you're a close second.
Yeah. I love being second.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Michael, I heard you talking about Dredge, and if you don't know, Dave the Diver now has a crossover with Dredge, so you can play Dave the Diver with Dredge content.
Yeah,
and it's super interesting and fun if you're playing that game and you're familiar with Dredge.
Have you? I saw a trailer for that. It looked really interesting. Have you played Dave the Diver?
I have. I've played it quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Because it looked like a game that I would really enjoy.
What do you do in Dave the Diver?
You dredge.
You dredge.
Okay. Well, so just starting off with a little small thing. So, of course, we know that Starfield is a lot of the land generation is done procedurally, or it's almost all done procedurally. We've talked before on the podcast how technically, if you found the exact same point on a planet, you would get the same land as another player. Like, it seems that people are pretty confident about that.
Is it possible even to get the exact same? I mean, it's got to be, right?
Yeah. So what I've seen, and you have to be very patient, but what I've seen is that someone might show where on the map of the planet, like on the planet that they're going, and you can basically just keep trying, just going in and looking for the same landmarks that they have when they land.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah. Well,
this is not it. Okay.
Here's
take off. Look from space. Try to find the exact. I mean, let's take a random guess. How many pixels are on any given planet? Is it 1,000?
I don't know.
Is it 10,000? I mean, how hard is it to pinpoint?
I mean, there's got to be 100,000
that many
points.
Yeah, because you'll move over a tiny bit,
right?
And you get a new
and it's
spot.
A whole new swath of land. Right.
Right. And Michael, are you saying that if I'm looking to land, I mean the elements that you might be looking for in Starfield are similarly placed?
Like even mountains and stuff.
Okay.
The POIs in the mountains, I believe people are saying that it's the same. It's not random.
So okay.
I think it's like it's seeded like Minecraft. If you give someone a Minecraft seed, they'll get the same generation.
And the flora and fauna are probably random, or is that also?
It's not random.
That's not random.
It's not random because it changes depending on the biome. The colors change, or like
So, and I was asking, like the flora and the fauna, like you'll come to the planet, you'll see kind of what it has. It's probably the same.
It is,
but when you get on the planet, that's when it starts to, you have to go, is it you going to...
Oh, like where it's running around.
Yeah, where it's running around.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's all.
Absolutely.
That's all randomly generated in a sense.
That has to be. That reminds me of No Man's Sky, where the land would be the same, the points of interest would be the same, but where a tree was different.
Right. So if you had a treasure map, right, you wouldn't say to another friend, like, hey, if you run out 500 meters, take a right, and then you're going to find 5 beasts and kill one. And that's not happening.
I like how you used meters too, by the way. Very worldly of you, sir.
I might actually start trying this pinpoint thing to find what someone found. Someone found a rock that, if anyone here plays Skyrim, they found a huge rock that looks like the rock where the city Solitude is built on in the game Skyrim. So if you're familiar, a lot of other players were saying, well, now you have to build an outpost there. You have to rebuild the city of Solitude on that rock.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it could be interesting too, as you think about how they code this. They're using certain engines at times, so that there might be some crossover, if you will, where the engine that they're using to code had that type of a thing, so that when they did the procedural mountain building,
right.
It's something that they've used in other games.
Yeah,
but you'll see homage to it because it's part of the engine.
Right.
Well, speaking of the engine, I mean, it is the Creation Engine 2. They used Creation Engine on Skyrim.
Yeah.
Right? So that is absolutely a possibility.
Speaking of the Creation Engine 2, there was a sort of a long post. We can link it in the show notes. I would invite anyone that's interested in like the coding and all that kind of stuff to check it out.
Can I do a sidebar? Because Eric, you're actually one level higher than I am. And I run a Starfield podcast. You're level 22 in Starfield, right?
Yes, sir.
Quickly tell me about your experience in Starfield from the beginning. Like, were you hyped at all? Are you a Bethesda man?
My background is that I've played them for a long time, and in my course of kind of how I get into the game and how it all unfolds for me it's been pretty similar with Bethesda, which is kind of out of the gate, you kind of get wowed, you get brought right into the story. Same thing here with this game. Got right in, started running, different quests, started doing some of the main storyline, even started doing side quests. At the 60-hour mark for me, and I've got about less than 300 hours logged, but at the 60-hour mark, it happens to me every single time. I'm like, okay, oh geez, I feel like I'm either grinding or I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I do next? Where am I? I've done so many things. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. And if that happens, sometimes I lose speed. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up, walk away. And I come back to it because, again, like I said, I've logged a lot of hours. But this is my Bethesda thing where every game I played with them, I get to a certain point where I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I know there's a bunch of paths, but I lose kind of that drive.
You're right. I think Bethesda games they all have a story. They have a main story, but it's not like, say, Baldur's Gate, where it's very, focused on that main storyline. It's more like Grand Theft Auto, in terms of the sandbox world. And I get what you're saying, because I think that's a common thing that happens with these big games is you because it is so open and so many things to do, you can divert a lot, and then you kind of lose focus.
And they pride themselves on that. And I do agree that to some players, it can be a bit of a detriment, especially if you come back later and you're like, what? Not only where in the story was I, but what story was I in? Because there's
especially
so
if you
many.
Stop and you in for the day, and then you come back the next day, you're like, what was I? Where was I? What was I doing?
Yeah, and the player kind of that I am for these games, I like to really explore the map. I like to kind of find all the Easter eggs. I like to kind of go everywhere, which means that I'm a sucker for a side quest. So I accept them all, right? Yep. And that's usually sometimes to my detriment, because then you're right. I come back in, I'm like, geez, I kind of forget like all the things I said yes to. And then I've got to figure out, okay, what thread am I going to pull on, and then follow it through. But the
bane of your existence is like vaguely worded quests, because you come back like a year later, you picked it up like a year earlier, and you're like, what am I supposed to? I don't remember what this quest is even. Has that ever happened to you?
all the time. But I have gear. Like some of these games, you have gear where you picked it up for a quest and it's sitting in your inventory, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Can I sell that? Can I not sell that? And do I still need that? Is that, well, wait a minute. This says I can't sell it. When did I pick it up? What does it go to? So some of that is happens, especially if I'm hopping between, like, hey, I played this week and I wait 2 weeks and I come back in. I'm like, okay, how to orientate myself to where I need to be and what I need to be doing. But
we should make a word for that, like gearophobia, the fear of getting rid of stuff that you might need later.
One of the worst games for that for me was the Division 2. I would play it a ton. And the way that Division 2 works is like you're just always getting loot, but you're not always getting the loot that you want. You're looking for specific skill sets and powers and all that stuff. So literally you'll be playing for hours and hours and hours trying towards a certain build, but there's no way to bookmark what you're doing. So I'll come back, if I haven't played in a month, I'll come back to Division 2 and I just have 100 guns. And I'm like, I don't remember what I was building towards. And so what I end up doing is I end up just dumping everything and starting over. And it's funny because even though I've been playing Starfield almost nonstop, I remember this happening in Fallout and Skyrim, where I would come back and go, I'll just start a new character.
Well, here's something that the game developers should hear for this. For some of these games that have this massive amount of loot, you should be able to create your own builds on what you want and what you're looking for, and then be able to populate it as you get it, so that you can have little templates. Yeah. And then then you can come back and say, okay, yeah, this is what I was trying to do. These, I've got these 3 things, and I'm waiting for these 2 things. Yes. At least that will kind of remind you, and that would, by the way, help me collect, because I have the same problem when I play these games. It's like, okay, I'm trying to do this.
So wait a minute, can you put that into layman's terms for me? Like, you're saying I want to do a melee build, so there's a built-in part of the game or interface that allows you to create or set aside items just for that one build, or what do you mean?
And as I understand it, it's like saying I want to build with this type of armor, but that I don't have, but I've seen it before. And so it's almost like you create a build with, like, let's say you want the Mantis armor. So you can actually bookmark
or like a stealthy build, right?
Yeah.
So now in this, so I assume most people do this. I also go out on the internet. I investigate and do research on other people's build. Oh, that's really nice. I think I want to try that. I don't have all the gear. I got to go do this and that to get it. But rather than having to rely on the internet to kind of remember where I was and what I saw and how the build looked, I'd love to be able to do that in the game. Say, okay, this is what I'm going after, and this is what I've got. And as it comes, some of these games, as it comes, it comes. But at least I can remember kind of like, oh, I wanted to try that out.
You know how some people scum save? Eric alt-tab scums. So he's alt-tabbing out to the internet constantly to find out what he's supposed to be doing.
Hey, don't we all?
Why not, right? I mean, that's the community, man.
I do that, my screen starts flickering or something weird happens with my graphics card. So I'm like, I limit my alt-tabbing.
I even said in last week's episode that, the first time you play through, you just play and you live that life. That's what I do. But that the second time, the second character, I was telling Duane that I'll probably pull up a list of all the possible crewmates so that you can just say, oh, that's the crew I want. Here's how I go get them. So what you're talking about also, Eric, is it reminds me of when you're crafting, you're able to mark. Yeah, Eric's nodding. You can't see it, but he's nodding.
Oh, yeah.
When you're crafting, you can mark the materials that you need.
That's right.
So that would be cool if you could mark traits on weapons that you want. And then when you're looting, there'll be a little mark next to a gun and be like, oh, that's got a trait that I want.
Yeah, and that's especially important for some of these games that are doing all these permutations of the weapon, adjective, gun, right? So sometimes you're looking for the adjective that you want, the super freezer or whatever it might be, but it's kind of a pain where you not that you forget it, but it'd be nice to say, hey, I'm looking for this. If you see it, alert me, because sometimes you're getting, again, especially with a lot of these current games, Starfield being one of them, you get so many weapons. You're always trying to kind of figure out, hey, what's this? Okay, do I want this? Is that what I want?
And it's a lot to read through every trait of every gun that gets dropped. So it's having that little marker would be really cool.
Well, Starfield was nominated for a BAFTA award, which is the British Acting Film Television. I totally butchered that. What is it, Michael?
British Academy Film Awards.
And they made a list of best games, apparently. Right?
Yeah, it's their award for best games of the year. I want to say Dredge is on there too.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of awards, it was also nominated for most innovative gameplay for the Steam Awards.
That's an award it should win. Yeah, while Baldur's Gate is not really doing anything specifically new, maybe I'm being a little more harsh on it. I think Starfield is way more innovative with their procedurally generated universe. Maybe they didn't quite pull it off 100%, but it's pretty dang good.
What I've heard where that game would be innovative is that it does the choose your own adventure thing very well. That's what I've heard from so many people, is that it just feels like you can make any choice and it will actually affect the outcome.
The difference between the two games for me is that in Starfield, again, I got this great story. I go off and I do events and things you can do. However, some of the things you do similarly every single time. It's like once you get the magic power, you go into that cave and you flow around. I mean, it's the same every single time. Whereas Baldur's Gate, their platform is you have to kind of creatively use the things that they give you to solve the issue, and generally it's not the same, and it doesn't have to be the same every single time. In fact, there might be 10 different ways to do it, and you get through it. But it's a lot more linear.
That's actually interesting, because Duane and I were just talking right before
we were talking about Swiss cheese.
You got here. We were talking about Swiss cheese. That's right. There was a Baldur's Gate developer that said that they were actually very inspired by a Hitman developer, because in the game Hitman, it's similar to what you're talking about, where you walk into a room and you're like, I got to kill this target, and there's so many ways to do it. How am I going to do it? So that's really interesting to me that Baldur's Gate is like that.
Well, and they referred to it as the Swiss cheese model, because it's a piece of Swiss cheese with all these holes.
I didn't explain
I know.
That at
all. Like you're leaving me hanging, bro.
I just got hungry. You said Swiss cheese. My mind said eat.
It's getting close to dinner. But yeah, I mean, there's this idea of like a piece of Swiss cheese has all these exits, and a player can choose and exit one of the holes and is in a new place.
You choose a hole to go in, and you'll pop out of a different hole, and it's all like intended. Like it's all intended, but it makes you feel like you figured it out on your own, and you figured out your own way to do it. I mean, that's. I just wanted to heap a lot of praise onto Baldur's Gate 3, even though I haven't played it. But
well, you liked Hitman. You're a huge Hitman fan, so I feel like I mean, and you're a DM for D&D, like tabletop games. So this game has Michael written all over it.
If you're a D&D fan, I mean, it's so faithful to D&D 5th edition that you just can't help be familiar with what's going on and saying, oh my gosh, I may never go back to the table and roll a dice.
I don't think I will.
Yeah, right.
It's so good. It does it so good. And if they keep adding more stories, expansions, or just sequels, Baldur's Gate 4, I mean, I'm a lifer at this point.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't coming off as biased, because I really do believe those things about Baldur's Gate, and I do intend to play it. But bringing it back to Starfield, I do think that it's innovative in that there's so many different games here. It is sort of like they took several different games and somehow put them together, like No Man's Sky and Skyrim and all types of games, and ships and flying. And back to what you said, Eric, that it's a platform. There is, that article that I was talking about, where they're talking about the creation engine, and they have looked really hard at the code, and they're noticing things basically that, like loading animations. We've talked about like getting up out of the seat on the ship and everything. Apparently a lot of those animations are way longer than they need to be. And they're saying that like some mods have already like removed animations, and it's the game loads in like a second, so it's like not a problem. They really believe that there's more optimization coming, and that they're going to add things. Like basically there's a foundation here to bring to pass a lot of the things that we want the game into it. And I don't want to be like pie in the sky and just hoping.
I was going to say real quick, just like from a dev standpoint, sometimes they have to dumb it down to the lowest specs.
That's right.
Is that what you were going to go for?
Yeah, no, Duane, I was going to say the same thing, having kind of being in this world. I mean, you're hedging for low specs, and so you're building in time if you don't have a great rig for it to work, or if you're working on a certain platform. But truth be told, some of those animations aren't adding to the enjoyment of the game. They're there to create an illusion that you're still in the game versus kind of a little ring going around and around. But yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
it's the Apple spinning color wheel. What was it?
Yeah,
oh man, the color wheel.
The word. Yeah. I mean, have you gone to take over? Most of us have done this, where you go to take over a ship, you go to just steal it, and sometimes the ship will take off, and it leaves the ground. Now, usually you're not by a window, but I've seen video of someone being by a window, and you see the ground zoom away in such a cool way. If you happen to be by a porthole, it's very cool. And then what happens? The game blacks out for a second, and then it loads, and then you're in space. And this person, for instance, firmly believes that all that they just didn't have time to add it, that all they need to do is add like
the atmosphere pass through.
The clouds passing through. There could be something there to mask that load so that it feels seamless. And I'm not going to expect it, but man, if they can add all this and make it feel more seamless, that would be very cool.
Have you done shipbuilding, Eric?
Very lightly. And so by the way, I think I got to the point in the game for myself where I was like, okay, I got the story. I mean, I get the stories. I have an understanding of kind of what that will be, and as an explorer kind of person, I'm like, okay, well, do I want to start doing outposts? Do I want to build ships? Do I, what do I want to do? Because I know. So this is, by the way, what I like about the game is that, if I want to go do outposts and build a little economy or build some engine, I can go do that. Or if I want to get interested in ships and go be a pirate, I can go do that. So you can't really do, again, back to Baldur's Gate for a second. You can't do that, right? You're on the rails.
Right.
You're on the story. You're going to follow through the story. You're going to meet people, do things, but there's a rail. Whereas here, it's like, okay, you know what? I got the story. I can still keep on going down a story road, but hey, maybe I want to play around the outpost, or maybe I want to build a ship, or or whatever it is, or I want to join a faction and kind of go deep and see where that takes me. That's the beauty of this game, is that you have all these chutes you can kind of go down, and then the mechanics for that thing is very different. It's also a little bewildering because there's not a whole lot of like, this is what you need to do. Back to the internet.
Yeah, there's not.
But
have you heard of Drive?
I have not.
You should join our Drive channel on our Discord, which is the Deep Space Research and Interstellar Vehicle Engineering.
Yeah, you can go in there and join our weekly build challenge. Now, this week is fun. It's the holidays, so we're actually doing holiday ships.
Right.
I saw certain people in our Discord that were very active, and we have the Starfield Adventure Club, and I would see this group of people very active. And then when we announced Drive, we're doing shipbuilding, all of a sudden there were new people that were like, oh, cool, this is what I like to do. And then they were very active because there's different types of people playing this game. And you reminded me that when, a few years ago, Elden Ring came out. Fantastic game. Also, like, really good world building where you just don't.
If you could survive 10 minutes.
Yeah. I haven't finished the game, and maybe someday, but I saw people saying, I like this RPG better than Skyrim now. And well, that's fine. It's an opinion. But I'm like, this is a different thing because the combat is amazing. But that's all the game is. It's world and combat. And it was like, in Elden Ring, you can't build a farm and like build a house and get married. Like, that's the difference. And that's the difference between Bethesda games and others.
Yeah, no, and you're right. The Elden Ring game, again, I've played it a ton also. It's a min-max game where you max out yourself and then you play for 3 or 4 hours, maybe more at that max, and then you get to another level, and then you're min again. So you got to go figure out, okay, what's the new stuff I got to go find to go fight these things to kind of continue going on, and they layered it right because the hard stuff, it's not like it's like, okay, I was in this land, I fought and killed everything, I'm gonna go to the next land. All the hard stuff is around you too. So so the giant you couldn't kill before, you can kill now. But anyways, But you're right. It's a fighting game. It's all about fighting. I have on my bookcase, I've got 2 Elden Ring books that I don't know what I was thinking. I was probably sleep shopping one night and purchased them, but they're like 200-page books that have all the different things that you can do. You ought to do all the lands, all that.
Oh wow!
But with that being said, there's a lot of variety. But at the end of the day, or the beginning of the day, is like, go fight.
Yeah,
because that's what you gotta do.
That is the core element.
Yeah. Can I just say I love video game books, like the coffee table books that are full of like video game art, like the concept art and stuff. I've always loved getting those.
Now we know what to get you for
the
holidays.
Hey, Christmas is right around the corner.
It goes all the way back to kind of those Nintendo, game guides that would come out, and they, have all the levels, and when I was a kid, that if I could get my hands on them, because they weren't,
dude,
Nintendo
available. Power. When you got that in the mail, that was the best day.
Yeah, I love
finally figure out how to beat Impossible. I mean, remember Impossible? No,
I don't remember Impossible. I do remember
it was impossible.
The Xbox magazine would come with a disc that had playable demos. That was really fun.
Yeah, we're talking about building ships.
Yeah. So just one other tip that I saw this week that I had not seen until now. We're talking about building ships. So you might actually want to know that the ship considers 40 meters, so basically 40 meters long or wide, maybe. 40 meters is a small ship, 60 meters is a medium ship, and 80 meters is a large ship. And here is why that is very important. The game will actually have your ship land closer to a POI that, like, if you see it from space and you highlight it and you fly down there, larger ships need like more clearance. You will actually land further away. Now,
do you love skip packing across the terrain? Then build big.
This changes the way I look at shipbuilding because I have a monster of a ship with tons of cargo. And this makes me want to have a small explorer ship also for going to POIs, because now I know I can land very close to it. Did you guys know that at all?
Well, first of all, I have some serious ship envy right now.
Me too.
Because I've got 2 ships, and I didn't know
the
how
Constellation,
many. And you're also worldly because you're talking meters. So again, we're on the same planet here. But that's really interesting. And again, I got to join your Discord because clearly the ship that I have, needs to be built.
I have to tell you, last week we did tall ships, and I was like, are people going to go for this? But they did, and it's so amazing what some people built. Some people built like some towers that are just like super tall, and then this guy would like jump off of it. I don't know. It was just, I don't know. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
I'm fascinated. I gotta do this. And like I said, I'm at that point where it's like, do I ship build? Do I outpost build? So you've made my decision. I'm getting ready to build ship.
Nice.
We got to shout out our guy Illinist, because he came up with a whole new channel for our Discord.
Yeah,
Cribs, baby.
Cribs. That's right. I was very busy that day. They were like, we need cribs. And I was like, okay, here you go. Click, click, click. And it was done. But yes, so every week now we've got, cribs is just sort of open. But cribs is your house, your outpost. Show us where you live. We've got that going on the Discord.
Yeah.
Let's, we wanted to talk about world building.
Definitely.
And it's so great to have Eric here.
Yeah, let me finish introducing him, because he actually works in basically the video game industry. I mean, you work for a major gaming company here in Las Vegas that makes gaming machines. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are gambling machines. However, they're video, and it's a game. Ergo, it's a video game. Is it not?
It definitely is a video game, and
right.
And that's a third of our business. So another third of our business, we make casual games. So many of the games that you're playing on your phone, we make in addition to that.
Can we say your company name, or
sure? I work for Aristocrat.
Aristocrat. I knew it was
Aristocrat.
Yeah.
And most people don't know the brand because you go in and you purchase the cabinet, and the casino does all that, but you know the games. But in our casual side of the house is called Pixel United. And the Raid Shadow Legends, I think, is probably one of our bigger games.
Oh, that's huge.
Very big.
Yeah.
And there's a host of other games that we do. So we don't only make casino type games. We really do cover the field.
We are not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, by the way.
Yeah, and if you've ever been in a casino, at least in North America, you've probably seen Buffalo, which is probably one of your more popular games. But it's like a penny slot, right? Or is it? What's it considered?
It's again, I think it's a slot game these days, and with Buffalo, it's a brand. So there are over 30 different varieties of games that fall under that brand. So there could be Buffalo Lightning Strike, there could be Buffalo Ascension, Buffalo Wheel. I mean, there's all different things. But if you're familiar with going to land-based casinos, you in the U.S., you'll probably have seen the Buffalo games or heard people yell Buffalo.
I've absolutely seen it. Everywhere.
They're huge here in Vegas. I mean, you can't walk 5 feet into any casino and not see a cluster of these games. But what do you do for Aristocrat?
Yeah, so I'm primarily a technologist in the company. While there are people that go out and make these games, we have studios around the world. My job is to make the tools that the developers and the marketers and the salespeople use to get their job done.
Gotcha. You were working on like an augmented reality tool that you can place gaming machines. Basically, you can walk around with an iPad in a casino and say, "Hey, I want to put this gaming machine over here," and you can literally see it on the iPad as an augmented reality. It was amazing. I was really impressed by that.
They've asked me to do that type of work. And so as you just said, Duane, one of the things we did, we built a tool that allows a salesperson to go talk to a casino and say, "Hey, here's a slot machine. I'm gonna put in augmented reality. You want to walk around it? You want to see it? You want to hear it?" And that allows us to show off our product rather than tell people about it.
To me, a slot machine is rolling the dice. There's so much of that in Baldur's Gate. There's so much of that in Starfield. Every time you kill an NPC and they drop stuff, it's a dice roll, right? So there's this kind of direct correlation when you think of like gambling, literally dice rolling in a craps game or in a virtual, aspect, like in a slot machine, a digital slot machine. It's very similar to like the type of coding that you would probably find in Bethesda's creation engine too, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, what's interesting that if I said that the difference for you, because again, some things look the same, but the difference is that our game developers are 98% mathematicians, right? So they're trying to play with math to make sure that the outcomes of the random number generator, which we would all use, are kind of right for the game. And by the way, that goes through all kinds of legal and regulatory bodies to make sure that when you spend, hey, you can win every 10 times. Okay, well, it's got to do that. You got to do 1 million spins. It's got to do what you said it's going to do.
That's interesting because when you talk about gambling with actual money, you mentioned you have legal requirements, whereas you take that same principle and bring it to a game, and the requirement is basically it needs to be fun. It needs to feel good for the player, right?
They need to win at least every X number of times, or else they're going to get frustrated, right?
And just like video games, guys, that there are different types of players. Some people are going to come in and want to play for fun for an hour. Some people are on a trip and they want to win, $1 million. And on the casino floor, there are different games that can do that. Now, I don't think the casino always does a great job at telling you which one is which. Right. But it's very true that some games, for instance, you don't win a lot, but you win often. Some games you can win a lot, but you don't win often. So it's just, and there's all kinds of things in the middle there. So and there's different players. So it's really a fascinating space because trying to hit on what people like is not easy. There's a lot of nuances to that. You got to pick the right, just like a video game, you got to pick the right theme. Yeah. You got to have the right math, and then you've got to have features in it that are going to attract people that are current and modern, and sometimes, by the way, retro. So it just there's a lot of fun and variability in it.
You see Starfield trying to appeal to several different types of gamers, and I think mostly successfully, but also weirdly unsuccessfully where I've seen people say procedural generation is a mistake because I've seen the same POI, or somebody said, like, I don't like these things. And what they're talking about is the handcrafted content. They don't like they say procedural generation was a mistake because I don't like these things that were handcrafted. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I think it's really confusing.
What they want is for everything to be procedurally generated, so everything is new,
right? And different. Which, don't get me wrong, I think that'd be awesome.
And I think that the industry with the development tools and where machine learning and artificial intelligence going, just from my vantage point, that you're getting closer and closer to that.
We are. We're on the precipice of a gaming revolution, really, with AI and level creation and what AI is going to do for us. I mean,
it will again, when we look at it, or I look at it, it will all feel unique, even though all they're doing is making the pond bigger.
Yeah.
So your mind won't be able to kind of understand or ascertain kind of like that's not unique. Right. But the truth is they just made the pond really big. So it all feels unique to you. So that's the computing power is getting us there, so that there's a very real possibility that all the planets, in Starfield, at some point will have not only their own terrain, which is unique, but they might even have their own flora and fauna that's unique.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where this is. If they're not thinking about that, I can't imagine they wouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Much like in Starfield, we see the stepping stones of technology to be able to travel the universe in the game. The game itself is also like a stepping stone using this procedurally generated content to the next level. Like this game coming out with doing what it's doing with building the world, I feel like it's nothing but a great thing for future games, right? Like people, like other gaming companies. I mean, we talked about No Man's Sky and we talked about Light No Fire.
Yeah.
Right. And how that was kind of the next idea of procedurally generation in one world. Did you watch the Game Awards, Eric?
I didn't. I've read some articles and I follow it, mm-hmm. but I missed the.
Well, let me ask you this. So you're an avid tabletop gamer as well. You have a ton of tabletop games. You're into game theory, game design, that kind of thing. Just down and dirty. Like, what was your favorite game this last year?
By the way, Baldur's Gate, like we talked about, I spent a bunch of time when that was in beta. Right?
Yeah, you played a lot of the beta.
So I played it again and again and again every time they made releases. So I had a lot invested. I went back to it. So that was one of my favorite games on the video side, and then on the tabletop side, God, there's like 200 games that got released this year, and quite honestly, it's not easy to bring them to the table all the time unless you get a lot of get the right amount of people.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the game that I liked the most this year, Duane, we played this. Mm-hmm. It was Thunder Road.
Curious.
Thunder Road.
Oh yeah.
So this is a game. It's kind of a Ameritrash game, is what I would call it, where it's like Mad Max, and you have a bunch of cars, and you're kind of racing, but really what you're doing is you're shooting and bumping everybody off the road.
Oh, nice.
And it's just it's a whole bunch of fun. So that
would make a great video game
and
too.
And they did that as a tabletop.
Yeah. In fact, it's a remake. It was probably originally made. Restoration Games is the company that remade the game, but I believe it was an 80s game.
Okay.
And they do this a lot with the games. They go back and find games and then remake them. But super, super fun. Kids get it, adults get it, and there's nothing more fun than like ramming somebody off the road, right? Or having them jump off a ramp and explode something. Or it's a super fun game.
Michael has what he calls a comfort game. Like Starfield for him has become a comfort game where, after a long day of work, he can come home and just kind of open the game up, relax a little bit, and run around. Did you have a comfort game this year? What is it?
Diablo 4.
Hack and slash, right?
Yeah, there's no, there's nothing better than having a tough day at the office and then coming home and killing 10,000 things. And not having to think about it. And again, you get the loot thing, so that's kind of interesting if you're following that. But I don't know. There's just something about kind of going around and just kind of mindlessly slaughtering a bunch of monsters that helps relax me after a tough day.
Yeah, that's what's good about games like Diablo, right? Is you have your build and stuff, but there's not a lot of choices that you have to think about. So you just jump in and you just hack and slash, and getting that loot. Like I remember the guys from Penny Arcade used to say, watching the numbers go up. You just like to see the numbers go up, on your loot and everything.
That was World of Warcraft for me. It's like, can I get the next big crit? What outfit or what armor do I need to be able to get that next highest crit?
Yeah.
And when is it going to happen? So,
and you mentioned armor, and we're talking about world building, and I was going to say to Eric that I've mentioned to certain friends now that, like, in other games, you always want to get, like Elden Ring, you want to get the best armor. And now I'm telling friends in Starfield, do you know what the best armor is? The one that looks coolest.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Because you just choose your style. And yes, you can get better versions of that armor. But a lot of times...
Are you saying because you can mod it, or...
Because you can either mod it or you can find a better version. If you have the crafting abilities. But essentially, you kind of just find the armor that fits the sci-fi style that you like.
Yeah. And it's funny, Diablo 4, different, right? Because in Diablo 4, you pick up all kinds of stuff, but then you can go just say, oh, I traded this and I sold it, and then you get the style.
Oh, because you transmog.
You can same idea. It's like now you can then style yourself up to whatever way you want, and still get new stuff and you look the way you want. But it's and by the way, I spend my downtime in that particular game doing the same thing, which is like, hey, I want to look a certain way, so I'm gonna do that. Starfield, same thing, where it's like, you're right, it's like I don't want to look like a robot with a unibrow,
right?
So I want to find some better gear.
My wife asked me, so she's played a little bit. She asked me, oh, what weapon are you currently using? And I said, oh, I'm using a pistol because I like the animation when it comes out. I like feeling like a hitman. So it's like literally. So I just like.
Never mind the fact that you can't kill anything with it because you can't snipe.
I don't know.
Well, you can. No, you get a good, like, if you get a really good roll, and we're talking about dice rolls, you get a really good roll on a pistol, or if you really upgrade it. And then if you put the skill points, you get skill points into that, you can be really good with a pistol.
Well, you can one shot. I mean, again, you can one shot a lot of stuff if you have a really good pistol. I'm not a pistol guy myself, but again, it's all. I think it's fashion, right?
Yeah.
It's like what is it that I want to do, and how do I want to represent myself as I'm playing this game? That is where it's at. A lot of these new games. Where, in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. Back to Baldur's Gate 3 for a second. My daughter kind of came in and she wanted to try it out and play it, and she put it down within the first 20 minutes because she couldn't customize the elf the way that she wanted to do it, the way that she wanted to do it enough. She's like, nope, Dad, I can't have these pointy ears. I can't have this color. I'm not playing. I can customize people better in these other games. So for her, it's all about who she creates to start.
I kind of get that because they went heavy on like face stuff, but body style wasn't. There's only like 3 body styles or something, right?
Right. So she's already familiar. She's already played enough games. She knows that there's a lot more options.
Yep.
And to her, that if that's not right, she's like, I don't know if I want to play because it's not who I think I should be. It's just really, again, back to that fashion statement.
I'd be curious your opinion on world building as it pertains to Starfield. What would be something that you think Starfield does really well as far as world building, And then I don't know, you don't have to say this, but if there's something that you feel like it could do better.
What I really like about the game is and I said this earlier, but how they get you into the game and introduce you to the world. I thought they did a fantastic job. It didn't feel, a lot of these games you go, okay, I know what they're doing. They're trying to introduce me to this place, that place, get me here, get me there, do this action, go steal this, so you get your idea of where everything is. But I never felt in this particular instance that I was doing that, or they were hand holding me too much. I felt like I really jumped in and started doing what I wanted to do. So that to me was really good. The challenge for me in Starfield was that, okay, coming out of the gate, there's a lot of choices I'm making.
Yeah.
And at times it's not to me easy to kind of go re-roll that. And I'm like, oh gosh, I spent 8 points in I forget half the things I did, but the challenge was like, okay, I can't. And now I'm like, okay, I'm either going to restart or I'm gonna just keep on going and saying, okay, it was a waste. And that's the one thing I felt like there's enough leveling that you kind of get where you want to get to, but once you kind of figure everything out, you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have spent any points in that, and I wish I could kind of just get it up and move it. But again, I don't think they've changed that, right? That's still, I think that's pretty difficult when you're skilling up.
Yeah,
it's pretty permanent.
And I like how he said that you felt that you could jump in and do what you want to do pretty soon. I remember the game had hit early access. I was at work. I couldn't play yet. And I was going to play that night. And I saw people saying, oh, the intro is pretty long. It takes a long time to get to where the game opens up. And I remember then when I played it, I was shocked at how fast it was, because I was like, have you guys played other Bethesda games? Because the intro for Fallout 4 is crazy long, and then the intro for Skyrim. In fact, the game,
I feel like they're getting shorter.
They're getting shorter.
Yeah, because like Skyrim was really long.
Yeah,
right. I was going to say that, and I think Skyrim and Fallout 4, the intros were better. But again, it's a scale, right?
Yeah.
So I think the intro is fantastic for Starfield. I really liked, but haven't played those other games. I had a way to compare, but there is no other comparison. Right. I mean, some of the other games you play, not Bethesda, they're so good at kind of just getting you wrapped up in the context.
Yeah,
and quite honestly, I think they have to be, because it's so story driven that if you don't suspend kind of whatever disbelief you have about where you are in your current world, like your life, then the game isn't as rich and as interesting. So again, they do such a good job at it. You kind of forget and let everything melt away.
How would you describe the feel of Starfield in terms of like, does it feel big to you? Because if you think about it, 1,000 planets with you had mentioned maybe 100,000 points that you could land on each planet. Granted, you're gonna, it's kind of similar on each planet. Well, there's a lot of variety on planets, actually.
Yeah, they have the different biomes, but you're not wrong that
maybe there's more.
You're
like
gonna
10.
See like kind of the same.
Yeah,
stuff.
you're gonna see that. But
I'm just saying, so POI different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So does it feel massive to you, or does it feel? Because I think for me personally, like there's some disconnect between when you're going from place to place, so it's losing a bit of like the massive feel, even though I do think it's massive. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if
so some of it for me, this is different points, right? So early on, you don't really see or feel the enormity of the star systems, right? You kind of know it, you read about it, you kind of understand that it's coming, but they're really having you explore, 2 or 3 places, and you're learning kind of all the mechanics of how to kind of get in and around once you're on the planet. So never felt like I was in some vast thing that I couldn't understand. It felt at times, once you get through that, started to feel a little Mass Effect for me. So I was like, okay, well, I need to understand, are these just planets and the kind of simple, or there's some nuances here? That's when it started get big once you started kind of, there are nuances. There are things to discover here. There are things that the data or the information they're giving me is not just junk. It means something. So as you started to decipher that, I think it started to get big. And then once you figured out what you wanted to do, then it got small again. Right. Yeah. So you kind of go through this back and forth with the game where I felt like I was in a comfortable spot. I was doing the things I wanted to do. And then I got to some spots and I realized like, oh, there's more here than I thought there was, because I played other games where it's like, when you Mass Effect, if you looked at the world, it'd have all this data about what it was, but it didn't really mean anything or do anything for you. Whereas here, I think it does.
Yeah. There's a lot of hidden systems. There's a lot of hidden, like for instance, what we talked about with the smaller ships land closer to POIs. Never, ever, ever does the game tell you that. It's just like, you need the community. It's like a game that can only exist in a time of the internet where people can talk about it.
Mm-hmm. There's discovery too, which is nice, because a player could discover something. Say they're in a bubble. Say they don't go to Starfield, websites or
our amazing normal people Discord server.
Right. So they're free to discover these things, like the lunar lander on the moon, and the fact that can unlock, or reading a book can unlock a point of interest on the Earth. Things like that.
I think we limit ourselves by our gaming habits, because talking about how it's a massive universe, and I agree with both of you that at times it feels very small. But I think about how I get locked into my gaming habits, and I'm going to do this and that and that, and then it feels very small. And when the game feels biggest to me is not necessarily when I'm playing it, but when I see somebody post something online that I've never seen before. And I go, whoa, what? You found a volcanic area with lava. I have never seen that before. And so it's like you start to go, okay, there's more out there. Do I need to change the way I play the game to see more things?
And I would add on to that, because I think there's certain points in the game when you log the hours where you do get into your habits, and there's other points where again, you've kind of amassed all your sub missions, and you've have a bunch of different things you got to do in the main mission. And then again, to me, sometimes it gets bewildering. But when you see that post, it's like a focusing agent. You're like, oh shoot, now they got simple again.
Yep.
And now I'm gonna go track that down, because I'm kind of fascinated about what that might be. And it needs that, because sometimes you can lose the thread. And posts like that really help, one, kind of make it feel big, but also kind of focus you back in, that's really something I want to go explore.
Yep.
Let's go do that. And again, that could be, anything, from somebody figuring out how to, get some gear, or finding a place, or building a ship, or whatever it is. Like, okay, now, that looks interesting. Let me do it.
Yeah.
Right. What's your biggest wish for the game? Or is there one?
My biggest wish for the game is that, not that I know what their roadmap is, but they kind of have a 3-year plan, and they continue to kind of add features to it based on the feedback that the community's given them, so that it becomes more and more interesting to kind of go into it. And partly because it's a platform, right? There's lots of places, I think, in the game where you can make things more interesting.
Will you download the Shattered Space DLC? And
I typically do, just because I get to that point where I want to try it out. I think that the other part for me is acknowledging those folks that have logged time, and again, give them back to this focusing. Give them focusing agents so that they can kind of collect themselves and go on another adventure, and feel like they understand this again. It's like Star Wars or Star Trek. The universe, right? So now that you've played all this time and you understand kind of what's going on and where those things are at, I'd love to get plugged back into something and get focused on it, and it be kind of, again, that main storyline bit that runs for a little length, so that I can again get back on the narrative. I'm a narrative driven guy. I like the narrative. There's certain points where, okay, I've built enough outposts. I've monkeying around with ships enough. I just, I don't want to be wrapped up in the story again.
I would love for them, based on kind of what you're talking about, it reminds me of that I would love for them to do what Grand Theft Auto 4 did, where Grand Theft Auto 4 had this huge city and they utilized it really well in the main story. But then they had this DLC come out and they utilized this part of this other part of the city that I didn't realize was underutilized when I first played the game. And then I was like, whoa, like it already existed. And I feel that way with Starfield. There's a lot in there. It's already there, but as you know, this term, I love this term that you're using, the focusing agent. I believe that there are things already in the game that they could focus you in on to give you a new experience, even with what's already there. And they've recently said they're working on an update for after the holiday. Early this next year, they said stay tuned because they're going to have some new ways to travel. So a lot of people, I mean, I've talked about the hover bike.
I was going to say they're going to again. They need a bike or a car or something to travel long distances on planet.
You know what's so weird about this? Like I didn't even consider a way to travel on the surface of the planet. When I saw this story, I was thinking, oh, they're going to revamp how you move about in a spaceship. Like not once did I think, oh, they're going to add a vehicle on the ground.
But that would be actually
really
too.
cool.
I could see it that way too.
Because like Diablo 4 for me, going to a different game, but introducing horses, allowed you to get. It just allowed you to get. You're not trudging through stuff, right? You can get to points, and by the way, you can fast travel too. But there's those moments where it's like, okay, I don't want to spend 20 minutes kind of running to the thing I want to go to because there's not much there.
And that horse was only $9.99.
That horse was free. They got my money in the beginning, and that's all they've ever got.
Sparkle horse.
Well, the thing is, there's little glimpses in Starfield of what could be, and what I mean by that is there is a mission in the game, and it's like the only time I see this where you're on somebody else's ship. And they're like, we're going to head down. We're going to head over here or whatever. And you're on the ship looking out the window while somebody else pilots the ship to another location, like to a space station. And you see it docking, not from that animation, but you see it docking while you're standing inside of it. When you get to that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's such like a moment where you go, oh, wow, this is cool, like to be on the ship walking around while somebody's docking it.
Yeah, so that goes back to my earlier thing where sometimes the game feels small because it's compartmentalized into boxes, almost like box number 1, the spaceship, box number 2, inside the space station after you've docked through an animation cutscene, right?
Yep.
Whereas, if it's one big open seamless experience, it feels big. So like that's a great example of like you felt like you were in that world. That was great world building. So if they could somehow, improve upon, I don't know, things in the game in that manner, it would go a long way.
It just shows it's possible. And they did it for that mission. So it's like, can they bring that to the regular gameplay?
Right.
Yeah. I think the other thing that will be interesting, this will start to probably perk up based on the computing power, based on machine learning, AI, but it would be really interesting to bump into an interesting NPC, while you're in port or whatever, and then go down a rabbit hole. And not be directed to go to this place and go to this thing, talk to this person, but like literally like, okay, I'm gonna, that person looks interesting. I'm gonna bump into them somehow, and then that touch off a whole place for you to explore. That unless you bumped into them, because there's 1,000 NPCs walking around.
Yeah,
they'll be able to do that, in the near future, and that will be really interesting because back to I like the idea of like seeing another ship dock with you, right? But it's like, hey, can I have a world where like if you're gonna put people in that world, they have a story, and if I bump into them and I want to do something with them, I might get embroiled into something. To me, again, that would be really cool to be able to do some of that and still enjoy all the main storyline stuff. But they'll be able to do that, in another 2 years.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about how Bethesda does something that a lot of games don't. I guess more and more are, but if someone's not familiar with Bethesda games, they should know that even though it's only showing you one mission at a time, like as being active, all the quests are active at all times. And I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I've seen people saying that they turned off the music. First off, the music's awesome, but I get where they're going with this. They turned off all the music. They turned the HUD off, or like you can turn the opacity all the way down. Uh, and so like they don't see mission markers, they don't see the HUD, and they just walk around the world and they just talk to people. And then sometimes someone will have a quest and it's like, okay. And they have to, I've done this in Skyrim where Skyrim, instead of the mission markers, you look at the signs on the road. There are road signs telling you where
you can use the world itself to
it's
get
kind of
around.
like a Neo pin the tail on the donkey game, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, hey, I'm gonna put a blindfold on, I'm gonna walk around and see what happens, and which is a little bit what I was asking for earlier, right? Just to be able to bump into it.
I think that I'll probably do that on a future playthrough, just where if I don't care about completing quests and stuff.
Sure.
But
it could be quite rewarding because you might find something that you've never found before.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a good chance of that, I feel like.
Again, the narrative's so strong in this game that, and if you played it the first time, you have to go experience, what they crafted. So some of the side quests are interesting, but I would say to anybody that's jumping into the game the first time, go experience the narrative.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. It's something that you want to do.
And the faction quests are good.
Yeah,
too. Mini stories, especially the UC one. Can't say anything because Duane hasn't done it yet, but I'm excited for him to do that. Let me ask you guys this, because this is something I was thinking of a lot as we kind of get to the end of this topic. I have seen that there are huge challenges for Bethesda in creating this new world. And for instance, when you play Fallout 4, if you're a Fallout fan, or let's say that when they're developing, they already had Fallout 3 and everything before. So there's Raiders, there's Nuka-Cola, there's all this stuff that exists in that universe that they can pull from. And then, of course, Skyrim has I played Oblivion. So that when I play Skyrim and it has a little reference like to the Emperor of Oblivion, like 200 years earlier, I have that little moment that's like, oh, that's so cool. I know what they're talking about because I played Oblivion. And so basically what I'm asking about is the challenge, not just for a developer to create a new world, but as a player, I came in and I was watching trailers and I thought, oh, that little Buzz Pop soda. I was like, that's going to be the new Nuka-Cola. It's really not. To me, the new Nuka-Cola is, Duane? Chunks.
Yeah, right.
Because that's the thing that we're all like, ha ha, chunks, so that's the new Nuka-Cola. So what do you think about the challenges of creating a new world, especially since a lot of players, I see players say the game is soulless. I don't think it's soulless. I just think that you have to do a little bit of work to find it. It's more of a rant than a question.
Yeah, no, and it's like, ooh, there's a lot. Now, to unpack that a little bit, I can tell you that, and this is a Bethesda thing also, there's so much content that you can interact with and you can pick up that you can't do anything with. That so if I were going to tell you this is soulless, it's like, again, if I'm a player type that I like to collect everything, I'm walking around with everything that you can imagine, but none of it does anything.
You should,
right, and it just has no. I mean, I can sell it, right? And there's a couple missions where the commercial tree where you got to sell different stuff like that. But once you're done through that, it's like, okay, well, that pack of cigarettes, I can't smoke it.
Yeah.
So what am I gonna do with it? So to me, that adds to this notion of hey, this is an awesome world. There's all things you can do with it. But if you can't, and if you can't use that thing for some kind of reason, then I don't know why it's there.
Yeah.
And then all it's doing is irritating me, because now I'm like, well, I'd love to be able to throw that plate at somebody, or I'd love to, eat that.
Yeah.
I know you can eat the peanut butter jelly sandwich, but there are things in the game where it's like, hey, there's some really, they did so much work to make all that kind of those objects real in a sense.
Yeah.
It'd be good to see them kind of take the next step. Although I think what they might also be doing is that, that's also prepping them for VR. Because if you then put goggles on, you kind of walk around that world. People love to pick that. I don't know if you've ever played Half-Life Alyx, but
just picking up random stuff.
Yeah, and you're looking at them and
pretty fun and throwing it, right?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that.
It's like Chekhov's gun in literature or film, right? Like if you introduce a gun in a film or a play, that gun better go off later, or better have some reason to exist or to be introduced.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't possibly have as many objects like that in a video game and put some kind of importance on all of them. Or can you? I don't know.
My counterpoint is that the purpose might only be that when you use space powers like anti-grav and seeing all that stuff rise off of desks and stuff, that could be it. However, in Fallout 4, you could break down anything into materials. So possibly, maybe that's coming. Because I agree with you, it'd be nice to have a use for anything out there.
And I think Larian, what they do really well in the Baldur's Gate 3 or the Divinity Original Sin, same things. Like most of the stuff that you can collect, you actually can use to solve a problem in that particular platform. So now it's like, okay, you collect it, and sometimes you don't want to get rid of it because you're like, well, I just don't know yet how to use this thing. And usually there's some kind of solve you can use it. Whereas in Starfield, for me, I learned pretty quickly, like, okay, most of the stuff is junk.
Yeah.
And now I got to kind of sort, the junk from separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, there's stuff there's a frustration because I know in Baldur's Gate that this stuff does have meaning. And when I can't figure out the puzzle and I can't end up using it, I get frustrated a little bit. So there's a comfort to knowing that there is junk out in the universe that is meaningless to throw or to interact with.
But I agree, it's such a foil to most video game players because we are taught that if you can pick something up,
you can do something
with
it
for something. And that's just not true with Bethesda games. and it's like, I remember an old, podcaster talking about Skyrim and coming into a Bethesda game for the first time, and they were collecting brooms. They were like, their friend said, you don't need those. And he's like, but what if there's a broom quest and someone needs 10 brooms? But no,
I think I know what the problem is. The problem is you can't pick up or interact with everything. There are only select objects that you can pick up and interact with. And 80% of or not 80, whatever, some percentage is that they are junk and useless.
Yeah.
So if you're going to allow me to pick up a styrofoam cup, why can't I tip over the monitor on the desk or the chair everything should be interactive? Right. If you're establishing that rule in the game, kind of. That's why I guess
their limit.
It feels a little disjointed.
But why can't I take that styrofoam cup and go over to the water cooler?
That makes more sense. Of water, You're right. Like, you should be able to smoke a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, why can't I smoke a pack of cigarettes, and why doesn't that have some kind of effect on me?
Maybe survival mode.
Right.
Next year.
Nicotine buff.
Yeah.
But I think that the challenge for me with Starfield, it's ratio too. There's too much junk.
Oh yeah.
Versus kind of what's valuable, and there's a lot of valuable stuff too. But even trying to sort that out, and I think they've got work to do. So you asked me before what I think they need to do. The inventory management and Starfield, they got a lot of work to do to kind of make that a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more fun, because it's a big part of a lot of these games is I like to play with my inventory. I like to do things with it. But their inventory management UI is a little lacking, I think.
I think it's fair. You start to learn, I think you open the game, and one of the strengths is that all the junk, all the stuff looks so well built into the world that it's that it makes it difficult to find objects. After a while, you start to notice, oh, that's what ammo boxes look like. That's what weapons chests look like. Mm-hmm. And then there's that like octagonal
cooler chest
thing that usually has the good stuff.
So is there something in the world that you still keep on picking up and you know perfectly well it has no value? Because there's objects like it always looks
the
important.
Collection stuff like the snow globes and the
books,
sentimental
I pick up the
value,
plushies.
Right?
Oh, the plushies, yeah.
See, I always pick up books because I want to see if it's a new book. Plus, Skyrim. Sometimes you would learn a skill, but that's not really how this game works. It's more like Fallout, where it's the magazines, right? Oh, and actually, the magazines. You only get that skill the first time you pick up that magazine. I don't know if you know that, but you'll keep picking up
They populate the magazines throughout the universe.
Yeah, it's random.
That's different than earlier Bethesda games, right? They would only put that one
it would only be that
one spot.
But because it's so big, they have to just put it everywhere.
But I understand. There's certain things where I've been playing and I know perfectly well. I should know perfectly well that object has no value for me whatsoever, but I see it and I'm like, ooh, I got it, plushie, right? It's like, I got to pick that up because somewhere I'm going to meet a kid that's going to I want to hand them a thing to make them happen. It's like,
oh no, I pick them up for me.
Yeah. You should be able to collect. You should be, back to inventory management. You should be able to say, hey, for the collector player, you should be able to kind of figure out, okay, I collected all these things, and there's a whole collection mechanic you could dive into, given how much variety they have, and then they should make some stuff disappear. So like, hey, the people that played it in the first 6 months, they got this plushie, but it's gone. So now you've got a rare plushie, and maybe that plushie increases in value the longer you play, right? Like they should.
That'll be the like the Fallout 76 version of Starfield. Starfield multiplayer.
Well, Eric, it was fantastic having you on the show. Really appreciate your input. Is there any last words or, things that you want to relay to our audience about Starfield?
I think the game is a super fun game. I think that, Bethesda took its time, but again, it took some time to get there. I think they got to a good spot, and I think they got to a spot where there's a lot of opportunity for it to get better, and pick it up, start playing it. By the way, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to the drive and go, figure out how to go build my ship.
Yeah.
Right on.
So because that's the next thing for me in the game. But I would say to you too that as soon as you think you got to a certain point in your game style, play style, don't let that limit you, because again, there's a whole thread on outposts, there's a whole thread on shipbuilding, there's a whole thread on different factions. So just when you think you're done, you're probably not. And then go listen to some podcasts, right, like this one, and that'll point you in the right direction because it will help focus you.
Well, that's what's great about our Discord is it does exactly that. Like people are, like you said earlier, posting photos of cool spots, and then you're like, I kind of want to go find that cool spot, or like the king of
a Leviathan 4, the king of Leviathan. There was just to tell you real quick, there was a plant that looked very regal. And one of our Discord members and listener of the show started referring to them as the king of Leviathan 4, and they like took photos kneeling before them in the like. And then other community members started like leaving beer at its feet, and it's like it's so funny. And but
there's been many moments like that where you're like, oh, I see this cool vista that this person discovered. Now I want to go check that out on the planet. So
like we started this podcast, and then we built it into the Discord, and then people came into the Discord. We did it so that there would be more value for players, right? Like a community element to a single player game. And yet these people came into the Discord and they've given the game more value to me. Like I'm getting more value out of the game because people came in and brought what they like their experiences. So it's just
absolutely,
it's awesome. I also want to say thank you, Eric, for coming on, and it's awesome to hear like your point of view on the game.
Again, thank you for making me the second guest. That's important.
Who's going to be the third?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and is it Venmo
or Zelle? which was
it's cash, my friend.
Cash. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I'm still cash.
Just a suitcase
or some crypto that's worth something.
We've got a couple of friends of the show too, right? You want to do shout out?
We've got some new shout outs, new friends of the show. These are people that have joined our membership on the YouTube channel, and this sort of just helps us keep things going, like the free coffee mug that we do every week to the winner of the SAC Award. So our new friends of the show that I want to shout out are Lim Bass and Denise Reyes. Guys, thank you so much for joining the membership. It helps us so much.
Yes, thanks so much. That's really awesome. We appreciate it.
If you're looking also to help out and be a friend of the show or join our membership, it's right there on YouTube. You can actually click the link under any of our newest videos.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone that listens on Spotify, Apple, and thank you to those watching on YouTube. All links are provided in the show notes below.
And an extra special thanks for comments and feedback. We do read them. It's so nice to see. And if you have a comment, suggestion, or an in-game story to share, just pop into our Discord. That seems to be the best place. You'll talk to us and talk to other listeners of the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my evil twin actually uses my Discord login. So whatever I say in there is not really what I want to say.
Yeah.
If you like the show, consider dropping a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. That would really help us out.
Yep. Thanks for traveling the Starfield with us. And thanks, Eric. And make sure you subscribe because we will be back for more next week.